Long before the sun shimmered on the deep waters of the Euphrates River, the magnificent Babylonian palace bristled with excitement. From King Nebuchadnezzar's royal bedroom to the cobblestone courtyard, the very atmosphere seemed electrified. The king had had a dream that troubled him greatly, but he couldn't remember the particulars. Because of the great importance he placed on dreams, he had to know what he had dreamed and its interpretation. So despite the early hour, King Nebuchadnezzar summoned the chief astrologers, magicians, and sorcerers to the court. The story is recorded in the book of Daniel, chapter 2. In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." These astrologers enjoyed a high position in the court of Babylon by inventing explanations to people's dreams. But their self-confidence soon vanished as the proud monarch added, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble." The astrologers looked at each other in fear. How could they possibly know what the king had dreamed the night before? With their lives at stake, they tried to reason with the king. "There is not a man on earth who can do what the king asks. No king has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not dwell among men." Desperately, they stalled for time. However, their hesitant gesture soon indicated to the king that these men were frauds. Hot with anger, the king commanded, "Execute them. Execute all the wise men of Babylon." Arioch, captain of the king's guard, hastened to obey the king's order. However, not all of the wise men had been summoned to the palace that morning. For Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah had to be summoned from their quarters for the death decree. These 4 young Hebrews had been captured as prisoners by Nebuchadnezzar's army during his Palestinian campaign. They had been taken to the palace to be educated. Instead of slaying all the officials of the conquered nation, it was customary for Babylonian kings to select the most talented and promising captives and to educate them as Babylonian advisors. When the soldiers were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death, Arioch explained to Daniel what had happened. At this, Daniel went into the king and asked for time, so that he might interpret the dream for him. In desperation, the king agreed to give Daniel time. What a responsibility hung on Daniel's shoulders. Not only his life and the life of his 3 friends were at stake, but the lives of all the wise men of Babylon. Much depended on what Daniel did in the next few hours. The Bible gives this account. Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. What a prayer meeting! 4 young Hebrews praying that God would reveal to them the dream of the heathen king, and that before the deadline. The God of heaven did not fail to hear and honor those prayers. During the night, God showed Daniel both the dream and its interpretation. Daniel hurried to Arioch, the chief executioner, and said, "Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him." Arioch took Daniel to the king at once. King Nebuchadnezzar gazed intently at the young man before him and asked, "Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it?" Without hesitation, Daniel replied, "The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days." Daniel was humble but bold as he spoke for God. He said, "You looked, O king, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver. its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver and gold were broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. Overjoyed, the king declared, "Yes, that's it. That's exactly what I saw in my dream." Breathlessly, the king waited for the interpretation. What could it all mean? Daniel begins, "This is the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. You are that head of gold. Babylon the head. Babylon, a nation of pure gold." A smile of satisfaction must have crossed the king's face as he heard those words. Historians confirm that this metal was a fitting symbol to represent the Babylonian kingdom. One historian described the great ancient city as being situated in the Garden of the East, laid out in a perfect square with a moat or ditch around this. Its gates of solid brass, its hanging gardens rising terrace above terrace, its 2 royal palaces. There, with the whole earth prostrate at her feet, a queen in peerless grandeur, stood this city, fit capital of that kingdom which was represented by the golden head. What could this strange dream possibly have to do with us, you say? Be assured Nebuchadnezzar had similar thoughts. But he soon learned, as we will too, that the dream given by God speaks in a very dramatic way to each of us. In only 150 words, God sketched the main course of history from Babylon's day, 600 years before Christ, to the climax of Earth's history. In the dream, God pulls back the curtain of history in advance. King Nebuchadnezzar and young Daniel find themselves looking down through the centuries for all time to come.